Hello, everybody, and welcome. Um, Welcome to our session, A Personalized Approach to Professional Learning. I'm Tracy Huelsman. I am the Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Coordinator for Shelby County Public Schools in Shelbyville, Kentucky. And I am with a panel of my colleagues, and I'd like for them to be able to say hey as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly. Would you like to start us off?
Sure. My name is Kelly Hudson, and I am the Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Coach at our K-8 school in Shelby County.
Lauren?
My name is Lauren Siegel. I'm a second grade teacher in Shelby County.
Morgan?
My name is Morgan Seeley. I'm a fourth grade teacher in Shelby County, Kentucky.
And LaPorsha is an instructional coach, CIA coach at one of our high schools, and she's not able to be with us because of a death in her family this past week. So positive thoughts sent to her. We miss her being on the team today. And Jennifer.
I am Jennifer Cox, and I am the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment at Shelby County Public Schools. That is new to me this year. I'm coming to you today from the principal perspective. I am former 6-year principal at Shelby County East Middle here in Shelbyville.
And one of the things that we're going to do today is share not only some things that we've been working on in our journey, but also share our perspectives. One of the perspectives that I share is a coordinator, but I've also been a coach and coached in this deeper learning world for quite a while. And we have a teacher perspective, instructional coach perspective, principal perspective, and lots of different perspectives in the room. And we also want to be able to hear from you. So our time together is going to be one where we look not only for chat, but also for questions at the end. So as we get started, we want to do a couple of things. One of the norms is as we proceed through the session, at any time, if you have a question, Lauren and Morgan are going to be looking and kind of managing the chat for questions. And as we go through at the end, we'll be able to have more of a conversation around them. They'll be looking at and organizing those questions. So feel free at any time to drop a question in the chat. We want to start and get some feedback from you. And we want to start with a question and cascade our answers to see what we've been thinking about and what you've been thinking in terms of professional learning. So I want you to think about professional learning, and there are lots of different roles in the room. But if you are a planner of professional learning, when you're thinking about planning professional learning for others, for groups, whether they be large groups or intimate groups, what are the most important qualities to consider? So go to your chat and just start typing. Don't push send yet, but go ahead and pull up the screen there and start typing. What are the most important qualities to consider for your participants? And if that's not your role, when you are a participant yourself, what is most important for meaningful professional learning for you? So let's take about 30 seconds and just start jotting. What are the most important qualities to consider for participants of professional learning? Jot something and I'll tell you when to push that button. About 10 seconds and we'll hit send. Two, one. All right, everybody hit return. Let's see what we have. the needs of participant, just in time, learning styles, usable strategies, relevance, engagement, relevance, ease of implementation.
I see something about the emotions. I love that. We do need to be emotional leaders too. So I love that, addressing the emotions of the group.
Time to develop and plan. Relevancy to roles. Audience needs and the type of professional learning. What else are you all seeing?
I liked seeing how we have we need to prioritize having different levels in our district having the same professional development so that we're all seeing the same thing on the same page, but also the perspective of admin, principal down to teacher.
Okay.
Somebody commented purposeful learning that can be used in the classroom immediately. I think coming off of COVID, a lot of our teachers just want that. They want something that they can implement immediately, a tool they can use, a strategy they can use. So something that isn't really big picture, but it's something they can manage and do quickly.
Yeah. And levels of experience. I mean, again, not that just one size fits all, that personalization, that not a one and done, that it's a continual process. Seen anything else? Keep saying purposeful, meaningful, engaging, needs of the group.
Differentiated stands out. I feel like that speaks strongly to what we do in Shelby County. And that's obviously a very prioritized need for teachers.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for that, that little bit of feedback for what you're thinking. And what we'd like to do is simply share what we're doing and give you an opportunity to think about what you're doing. And we'll just share our journey and talk about some of the things that we've done, some of the things that we've learned along the way, some of the things that have been growing spots for us, and see if we can't help you and share just what we're doing right now. So it's important to define our why. And a lot of the whys are exactly what you were talking about. So for us, it was why did we need professional learning strands? And we have thought about professional learning with regard to strands for a bit. And 2 or 3 years ago, we said we are having an issue with recruitment and retention, retaining people in our district. New teachers can't be folded in to our culture in just 1 year. So when we think about all of the things in terms of if you were in the keynote, there were many things that that Susan Patrick talked about that don't happen overnight. And so when we think about what we need in order to be a competency-based district and to serve all students, that doesn't happen quickly. That happens over time. And so how do we support new teachers and teachers who've been in the district for a while? How do we continue to support those teachers and new teachers in our culture? And then that has to be through personalization. All staff need different things at different times. And ultimately, that means we have to create a system. And how do you create a system that will sustain that? And how does it not, how do we not have a one and done culture? So these are the questions that we had to pose to ourselves. And these were our 3 big rocks. So our strategic leadership plan, we are now in our 3.0 leadership plan, and many of these questions come to life in our priority areas of inspired learning, leading, and living, and they live here. And not to get in the weeds of that, but our 3 questions serve and live behind these 3 big priority areas. So here are the questions that go with those priorities. How do we build clarity around big rocks for all adults How do we build agency? How do we design a system and sustain a system to build clarity around the big rocks for all adults, every certified person in the district, no matter what their role is? And how do we design and sustain a system to build agency and understanding for all adults? And then with that third piece about the system, how do we coordinate consistent learning and leading throughout the district, connecting every school, every learner with all the different needs that we have, from new teachers to seasoned teachers with all different entry points? And so Kelly is going to share with us our phase 1 entry point, where we started with those questions.
So phase 1 essentially was last school year, the 2021-2022 school year. And essentially we were looking at, what do our staff need? And so it kind of boiled down to the how and the what. And so in our professional learning, we had magenta days, which were for the how. So that is the foundation strand for our brand new teachers. It's our pillars of thinking strategies, which involved community, the workshop model, the language of thinking and discourse, and then also competency-based education. So all of our teachers fit into one of those areas. And then we also had our green days, which was clarity of mastery. So that is more PLCs or DPLCs. It's content specific. What is mastery? And so our teachers took part in both the how and the what. So the purpose of us creating these personalized learning strands was so that our teacher evaluations became less about compliance and just something that they had to do every year. And it really became a way for us to build capacity and sustainability, and for teachers and staff to continue to grow from year to year. So this is what their evaluation forms looked like. And in there, every teacher, every staff member had 2 goals. So they had a pillars goal, and they also had a clarity of mastery goal. And so they wrote those goals in conjunction with their evaluators or their instructional coach. And they used the continuums that we provided for them around the clarity of mastery and the different pillars. So this is what our teachers saw when we first rolled out the professional learning plan to them. So across the top, you will see that it was almost like a hierarchy the first year in phase 1. Underneath where it says participants, it kind of helped staff realize which strand they might belong in. So for foundations, those were for our brand new teachers. So if they were new to our district in last school year, they were automatically in foundations. And then we had 3 different levels of pillars. So the first level was our workshop and community. And so there's a continuum linked up there that they would use to kind of self-assess and decide if that's where they needed to be. Once they felt like they were at mastery of that, they might be part of the level 2, which was discourse and the language of thinking. And then level 3 was for teachers who really excelled in all of that area and could be leaders of those different strand cohorts. We also had teachers partake in a collaboration with the University of Kentucky as part of the competency-based ed cohort. And so they were in their own strand for competency-based education. And then all teachers were part of clarity of mastery, because that really helped us define what is mastery for students and how do we help them get there. And so at the bottom, you can see these were the different strands that were available to teachers last year.
So one of the things that's important is to understand that we have a cycle, that when we talk about magenta or green days, we have a built-in calendar that when you look here, you'll see green days, which are school-based days where the schools are focused on their clarity of mastery goals, which are rooted in the continuum the Clarity of Mastery continuum, where either teams or the school themselves are focused on those goals. And the magenta days noted are where those cohorts are meeting throughout the year. Those teacher chosen, staff chosen. This is everyone in the district, every single staff member. The superintendent last year as a new superintendent was part of Foundations. This year she's in another group. Everyone has principals, everyone has a different cohort that they are part of. So that is considered district professional learning on those days. This is something that is embedded as part of our professional learning in the district.
So as I mentioned before, these were the strands that were available to our staff during phase 1. So there was Foundations, the pillars of thinking strategies, competency-based education, and of course we had Clarity of Mastery. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of those strands, and then I will have our 2 teachers share their experiences during phase 1.
And so one of the things, Kelly, I'm going to hop in just really quickly and say, as we're sharing how we went about our setup and the things that are foundational to us, I would encourage you to think about what are the ways or what are the things that might be important to you, or as you're thinking about how you might set up a system, what are strands that might make sense within your context to organize around, so that you don't see things as one more thing. And the way that this is starting out, we want to be able to share with you in phase 2 how it has become a true system. So just be thinking as we share, how might you be able to organize in your context? Thanks, Kelly.
So one of our first strands is Foundations, and we've had this strand. I started 8 years ago, and I remember being part of a Foundations kickoff. And every strand has a structure similar to this. So in August, we have our 3-day institute, and we also have a school-based orientation for all of our new teachers and staff. You'll see that they also have some pod meetings throughout the year. I believe last year they actually had 6 pod meetings. There's only 3 of them represented on here. They are also offered school-based coaching from their instructional coaches. All teachers were able to go on at least 2 classroom visits to get into colleagues' classrooms so that they could see what was happening in other classrooms, which teachers don't often have the opportunity to do. And at the very end over here in May, well, actually it was in April, we had a teacher exhibition, and our teacher leaders will talk about that a little bit later. But the purpose of the Foundation strand is really to kind of help our new teachers, and they might not even be new to teaching, they just might be new to Shelby County, but to really get them to understand the foundations of what it means to be part of Shelby County, to let them see a little bit of really all of the strands, a little bit of workshop, a little bit of discourse. They get to learn about mastery learning and standards-based grading and our profile of a graduate. So we embed all of these different learning experiences into this year-long strand cohort that they're part of. And then we have our pillars of thinking strategies. This is where a majority of our teachers last year fell into their strands. And there are different tiers of that. We had community and workshop, we had the language of thinking, and then we had discourse. And so again, they had a similar structure where they had embedded professional learning throughout the year. So when Tracy shared that calendar earlier and you saw the magenta days and the green days, that is what this refers to. These cohort meetings are happening on those green and magenta days. And so I'm going to invite Lauren Siegel to talk about her experience last week in one of these cohorts, or last year.
So last year I was in the Discourse 1 cohort, and there was about 5 or 6 people in my group. Everybody at that time were members of my school. So we met together after school. And my biggest takeaway was just like the rich conversation that we had around things that we were doing in our classrooms. We a lot of times also talked about maybe trouble we were having with discourse and how to really deepen that learning for our students. And so listening to suggestions of multiple grade levels. We had a kindergarten teacher, first grade, second grade, and fifth grade in our cohort that were all working towards this common goal of deepening the discourse in our classroom. And so being able to have those rich conversations and being able to use the curriculum that was created for us, we were really able to dive in and have really rich conversations. And so that was my biggest takeaway. It was kind of like a problem solving session for me when I was thinking about how to best meet the needs of my students and really deepen that rich discourse in my classroom.
So I see in the comments, somebody had asked about how the pod meetings were facilitated, and essentially the instructional coaches worked to create a facilitation guide for those pod meetings so that there were some kind of general discussion topics, but within each of the cohorts, of course, they personalize that to the needs of their group and of their school. Lauren, do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure. So in addition, my cohort was led by another teacher. So she just basically kind of posed the questions and kind of focused us for the day. Spoke about logistics, what we needed to have prepared for next time. That's the way that she led that. But in thinking about my particular cohort, we really thought about what we specifically needed. There was a lot of different options that we could choose from. And then we just kind of dived into that to personalize our own learning for each other too.
Thank you for sharing.
Kelly, I'd like to add too, one of the things that we really strive to work on with workshop discourse, the thinking strategies or the metacognition strand, and then also now for this year that we'll have with our assessment strand, is the real work on growing capacity and agency with our teachers and that facilitation. The one thing about the facilitators that we work for is to really hold true to the facilitator not being expert. Those groups are not intended to have an expert facilitator, but more, as Lauren is talking about, it's about those conversation groups. And so that is really important in these cohorts as well.
Another question we just had that I'll touch on really quickly is if these pod cohorts are at just one site or if they're across embedded at schools or across the district. And you'll kind of see a little bit how that changed with phase 2. But in phase 1, a majority of them were site-based because there were only 5 or 6 cohort strands. So it was pretty easy within each school to create a cohort and have enough teachers that that they were good meetings. Of course, we had to adapt a little bit for phase 2, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about phase 2. One of our other strands was our competency-based education strand. These are some of our most experienced teacher leaders who were ready for the next step. And so a majority of them took an opportunity with a local university to learn about CBE a little bit more in depth. And Morgan Seeley was part of that group. So I'll let her talk about their strand a little bit.
Yeah, so this was a really cool experience for me because I had started my work with CBE a few years prior, but I hadn't had that group of people to come together with. So I was really excited to have this opportunity because I was thirsty for it. So last year I was able to come together with a group of educators from all across the district. So it wasn't just elementary. I also was able to communicate and collaborate with middle and high school as well. And we worked together throughout the year on different projects, but mostly it was a place for us to come to communicate, to talk about what was hard about figuring out this competency-based approach in our classroom, but also to share our successes and what's working well. One of my favorite things about meeting in person with this group was that I got to have conversations with people I didn't get to see every day and that had a different professional experience than I did. Like I had started my journey a few years prior. And so I was able to get fresh ideas from people who had just begun their journey. But also I was able to share some ideas to help my colleagues move forward in their understanding and learning. My favorite part of this group was our ability to meet and talk with Rose Colby. I felt like my district did a great job at giving that opportunity to us, and having that professional person kind of guide us through our understanding of CBE. And then I was also, kind of brave enough. I got to meet with her one-on-one. So this opportunity just kind of opened up a level of communication with someone in a professional field that I would not have gotten otherwise. There's no way I would have been able to have that exposure with someone who is an expert in the field. So that was my biggest kind of happy moment coming away from the whole year, is having that professional experience. I really enjoyed at the end the artifacts that we got to bring together throughout the year. Like I said, like we've mentioned in our schedule, it's embedded throughout the year that we come together and meet. And at the end, we were able to deliver kind of some things we worked on throughout the year. So getting to see what everyone else had done was really meaningful for me and very inspirational as well. I saw in the chat someone had asked about when do we meet. It was always after school, but it was always an appropriate time. It never felt like it was too long. It always felt like a comfortable fit, and the progression throughout the year again was very meaningful as we worked. And this year, and I'll speak about this more when we move on to talk about this pillar 2, but I'm actually a facilitator this year for my group. So I went from being someone in pillar 1 in the group to now I'm a lead position in pillar 2. And I'm excited to tell you guys how my district supports me through that process as well once we start talking about pillar 2. But it was a really great experience. Again, my favorite was just getting that chance to talk to each other and collaborate in a way that we had not done, or at least I had not had done before in the past. So it was really great.
Thank you for sharing, Morgan. Dr. Cox, would you like to share your principal perspective on phase 1? You're on mute.
Of course I am. You can't do a Zoom meeting without having that at least once. So you're welcome for being the first person to have to be reminded that they're on mute. I will say that it was so awesome to actually have the opportunity to take what I was working on as a building leader, with, accountability. And we all know building leaders are not only accountable to all of this rich discussion and this wonderful professional learning, but we're accountable to what happens when that comes back to the building and it's boots on the ground and it counts for kids. So having protected time each month with our green days to really work with my staff and to have them bring all of this collective knowledge and expertise from across the district, depending on which cohort and pod they were in, to be able to say, okay, so let's get clear in our building what all of this means to kids. And let's connect what it is that we want to create here at, and just fill in the blank school. It included a specific feedback loop where I knew what each staff member was participating in so that I could make sure that in walkthroughs and evaluation conversations, we were really talking about what they were learning and how they were applying, and also connecting belief to action. When you are talking about the district level view, that 30,000 foot view, it's really about cultivating belief. But when you come back to the building, it was about aligning your actions to those beliefs and making it happen in your classroom, in your PLC, in your school improvement plan. And I had never before last year had protected time to make my 30, 60, 90-day growth plan or my school improvement plan real to my teachers, and to have each teacher be able to see themselves in the actions of those plans, made those plans not just a compliance hoop, which many of us in school leadership can feel, but it made them plans that now we could actually put action to and measure. And I would say that it made my knowledge not only of the quantifiable data that comes to us every year, but the qualitative data that goes along with school improvement. I was much better able to report the qualitative data because of this work. And that was super important. One of the things that I do want to just go back to what Morgan was talking about with the competency-based education. I know through some of my work with higher ed and getting my doctorate, as I attended conferences, anybody who's in the room that might be working in higher ed and looking for university district collaboration that is really meaningful to the district and to teachers. What we did with the University of Kentucky, and I put contact names in the chat, was really a good reciprocal model for professional learning, not only for us, but also for them. Because as a university, they're always looking for ways that they can give the instructional prowess to teachers that are coming out of the university and make them the most marketable for districts around them. And so that was a reciprocal, and it is competency-based. Yes, thank you, Tracy. So it really was a chance for the university to learn from us, and then for us to learn from the university. And so that was also a really powerful experience as a building leader to see my teachers gaining insight into what competency-based education is in their classrooms and being able to report on it to an authentic audience.
Right, Jennifer, would you like to give a little bit of clarity about mastery of clarity, please?
Yes, I sure will. Essentially, our clarity of mastery put together our foundations work of Shelby County Public Schools and culture, putting together our thinking strategies, and then putting together competency-based education, which is what we're currently in the work in as a district, and putting that together and making it dedicating it to a school focus. So when we were speaking earlier about how each individual staff member could pick their strand of learning, the clarity of mastery days that are developed, that are held for us, is where the personalized building work happens. And so how do we take foundations and thinking strategies and competency-based education and move the needle for our building? So that protected time was some of the most important faculty meeting time that we had. So somebody was asking about accountability to the mastery of learning. I think I saw something in the chat about holding people accountable as a building leader with clarity of mastery items and events. It really was about the things that you see on the screen right now. It was about bringing that to formative and summative conversations, because teachers were developing their own goals in their pods, and me helping them reach capacity there, including the language of those magenta strands in walkthrough feedback, strengthening our PLC and our district PLC work, because Lauren was talking about strategy sharing and bringing that wealth of strategy resources to the PLC, having full faculty support and buy-in for our improvement plans, and then developing a culture of coaching. There's no There's no stronger linchpin to developing a culture of coaching in an entire district than to see building leaders and district leaders like your superintendent participating in that learning side by side with teachers. And so I was participating in this competency-based education strand with teachers. Our superintendent was participating in foundations with teachers. So modeling for staff members that to develop mastery is ongoing. It is collaborative, and it is something that we are all on different continuums about.
And while our state requires us to have 36 hours of professional development seat time, that is not something that we care about. We make sure that, we don't have that. We build it in, and we determine like what is important to us as a district, and we embed it. And so we're not about professional learning hours. We're about the learning itself and building that into our culture. So phase 2 and beyond, where are we kind of now? And what do we see already going forward? So here are some things that we've noticed, and what does it continue to make sense to shift and change? We had lots of feedback with our CBE group last year. One of the things that we wanted to make sure was they were the first group, or one of the first groups that had some feedback on our academic competencies first round. We're still working on that. We have our profile of a graduate competencies that we work on, but this group with work with Rose Colby, that was so important. We also noticed with feedback that we for the 4 groups, we wanted to kind of restart after everyone has been out of schools for so long and remote, that we could actually have the good fortune of being back together again. We started foundationally with what we knew we believed in and were the cornerstones of competency-based education, the things that afford equity for all students. And that's where we started. But we knew that folks would say, I don't see myself in this necessarily. So we've got to build forward. And so the offerings changed. And also saying, we're going to build this system. Folks weren't going to get it at first. And so continual conversations for folks to be able to see themselves in the work in this second year, or moving forward, planning for this year even, conversations began to say, maybe it makes sense for us to think about it within this context. Maybe it makes sense for us to think about this in terms of professional learning. Does it make sense for us to align ourselves in this way? And so thinking about having common language with magenta, things start aligning themselves with magenta and green. And we have questions that surround them that are aligning with each of them. So just like you are here today, like, wow, what are you all talking about? There's a lot of stuff with green and magenta, and you all are throwing a ton of stuff. That's kind of how it felt initially in the district with that. This is a lot. But as we continue to fold in with it, a lot is making more sense. So what else did we notice? Everybody add to that. What else did we notice that informed our next steps?
Just coming from the coach's perspective, there were a couple of big noticings. One of them was that rather than having CBE be its own separate cohort and like it was something different than the rest, we sort of realized that competency-based ed is kind of like the end goal of all of those strands. If we are doing workshop model really well, then it is student driven. And so when we were looking at all of those continuums that we had created, the highest level on that continuum was really speaking to competency-based education. So rather than that having it be a separate strand, it really is like, if we're doing all of these other things really well, then we are creating this culture of CBE. And then kind of along with that, we had a lot of teachers who were, let's say, in the discourse strand, and they started doing a lot of discourse. They had some great protocols in place, but they still didn't feel like they were at mastery of that. They still wanted to continue working on discourse for another year. So we realized that we needed a way for them to continue in that work of discourse or whatever strand it is, but having it be a little bit different than, having them go forward instead of just repeating what they did the year before. So those were two really big changes that we realized needed to be in place for phase 2. Anyone else?
The other piece that we didn't highlight a lot about is we used to have different institutes. We had Thinking Strategies Institute that a handful of folks from each school would attend each year, which was a 4-day institute, which included classroom visits. And what we want for all of our teachers every year is to have a year-long institute experience, which includes classroom visits rooted in their focus area. And that's the goal also for what we're doing here as well. Every teacher in the district, a goal is to have 2 classroom visits each year as well. And we started doing that last year. So here is where we were. So go back one, Kelly. So here is where we were last year. Each of these strands, foundations, pillars of thinking strategies, this is what we believe. We believe in thinking strategies. We believe in the workshop model, discourse, the language of thinking strategies. We believe in these things as foundational to competency-based education. Through these things, we create and provide gateways for competency-based education for our students. Not the only ones, but this is where we can begin. And linked here are those continua of growth for each of our students, for adults rather, for their learning. We knew that this was just a place to reset because we've been in this work for more than 10 years. We decided, though, that we have to grow. And in year 2, based on feedback and conversations, this is where we are now. So the shifts came into, we're in foundations, and we know that we have our cohort, we have the success criteria. If you're new to the district, these are the things that we will ensure through that cohort you will be successful with. But we've shifted to say that if you feel as though you need support through structures, these are the cohort vehicles that can help you after you have after you've self-assessed with either the workshop or your CBE continuum, or metacognition to support agency. You have these continua that are connected. We shifted also, and our CBE, the CBE, we said that it wasn't its own, but embedded. Assessment became its own strand. So our strands are foundations, structures for equity and agency, metacognition to support agency, and assessment for equity and agency. And we have still our workshop levels 1 and 2, co-teaching, Bellarmine Literacy Project, that is in conjunction with a university here in Louisville, the Georgia State Successful Start program that is for first and second grade, kindergarten and first grade teachers. KDE, we have an RTA grant group. Our past and highly structured teams, they felt as though they weren't seen anywhere and they wanted their own group, and so they are able to meet with them and specialists and have their own instructional time. In metacognition, we have thinking strategies and discourse. Our UK Excel group is our federal grant group that's working specifically with our EL folks at one school this year. Bridging Gaps Through Language is specific Spanish language and culture focus to build capacity and community with families, with students, and with teachers. This is not only in person, but also self-paced. One thing that I wanted to say too, some of these are large groups, some of them are small groups, some of them are hybrid, workshop thinking strategies, discourse, performance assessment, all of those are a hybrid, and we utilize PEBC out of Denver. We work with them and utilize their professional learning modules. They're wonderful. It's Canvas-based. We have been with them for a long, long time. All of these are either in-house or in partnerships with university partners. The UK CEO program is what Morgan spoke to. Reading Recovery. These are our partners as well. And this is our Reading Recovery teachers, their time for instruction. They're meeting, but they weren't seeing themselves in professional learning. So when we think about ourselves as learners, we have to, as a district, think of ourselves as a learning community. When are we coming together? This is reflective of times on Tuesday afternoon, and also honoring the times when these teams are coming together on Saturdays, when they're coming together at different times, when they are working in their grants, when they're working in their programs, because this is learning that's being honored not only at this district level, but in their teams. Some of the schools, I don't know who might want to speak to this, but there are not just school bases all across the district where folks are going to learn together and lead together and choosing the cohort that might make sense to them. One I wanted to really highlight too, Complex Needs. Complex Needs, that group was another group that said we never see ourselves in professional learning. Well, we need to be together on Tuesdays. Can we? Yes. Yes, you need to. And I'm so glad that we're having the conversation. So that's a group. We didn't get our Kentucky writing project grant. Fifth grade, it was a fifth grade grant this year, but we reached out and have a partnership that's even better than the grant. And so they're in performance assessment. We have the Kentucky Writing Project, Growing Empowered Writers. This is a K-12 workshop that the Kentucky Writing Program is working with us specifically to create and work with our teachers for writing. And so there are so many neat opportunities that have been in response to what our teachers have asked for, but that are meeting needs for our students as well in a parallel pedagogical way, because there's so many teachers who are being asked to do things that they've never done before. And we have to provide opportunities for them to be able to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to somebody else now to speak to some of the questions, even in the chat.
I thought what you had just said, Tracy, was a great bridge on something that I'm experiencing right now. One of my most fun realities of facilitating a group this year, I'm now in performance assessment, is that my principal's in the group with me. So we get to have wonderful conversation. And again, the support that I've been given by the districts to facilitate this group through Canva has been so great. But having that opportunity allows me and my principal to participate in our own learning and discourse of what we want performance assessment to look like within our classrooms and our schools. And it's just a wonderful structure where me as a teacher, I feel like my principal and I are learning together, and it's been so meaningful, and we're building a great relationship by doing that together. And I really liked this flip of how we could go from our pillars of last year and how it's much more intentional this year, and that responsiveness. I noticed some comments in the chat about how important it is to value staff members and how it's not just about asking about what they need, but it's turning around and producing what they need. And I feel like Shelby County's done great with that this year.
Yeah, and these decisions, by the way, are made at the beginning of the year based on growth goals and those self-reflections, in tandem with instructional coaches and principals. So they're conversations that they're self-determined. Someone asked about counselors. One of the things that we noted, most of them are with SEL this year, but thinking about next year, it may be necessary for them to have like their own group, much like PASS or something. So that's a thought for next year too. Do we want to go on to the next? We're getting close on time. So Morgan and Lauren, will you talk about these two pieces that bookend the year for us?
Sure. I'll start with the Mastery Learning Conference that happens in August. This was a really fun experience for me because not only did I get to learn with other teachers, but I had the opportunity to lead as well. So I was able to lead a few sessions about what my workshop looks like in my classroom, my reading workshop. But then I also got to join other teachers in some learning as well. I really appreciated that this year we kind of got to make our own schedules. There definitely was like sessions that we needed to attend. We had the must-dos, and then we got to pick other sessions to attend. And I found that really valuable because I could really focus on the things that I wanted to grow in, topics that I was really interested in. So I felt like that was very differentiated and personalized to my own learning. And I really appreciated that this year.
I'll go ahead and speak about the district-wide staff exhibitions and learning. So Lauren really pointed out the priority of choice that we have in our district, especially starting at the beginning of the year, and how that kind of ignites our mission throughout the year and what we want to work on as educators. But at the end, what I really liked is that our defenses of learning, our district-wide exhibitions, were done in our school building. So all of these professional people that I didn't get the chance to meet with all year long, who had other experiences outside of competency-based education, I got to see a little bit about what they were learning about this year or that past year. And I got to see their development and work throughout the year and how it all kind of comes together. A cool thing that we experienced was we're able to kind of see all the bridges. So whether if you were thinking strategies and discourse, or if you were a foundations really working on your workshop model versus, someone like me who I was diving into competency-based education methods and agency and things like that, we were able to all come together as a staff and really go in depth on the meaningfulness of our Magenta Days, and not only share our exhibitions of learning, but the process in and of itself. And even there at that meeting, we had this opportunity to share the successes and maybe like the wants that we need for the next year. And we were definitely heard in those meetings, obviously with how the professional development is handled this year. So it's been a great way for staff to kind of come back together and share their learning. I really liked seeing what everybody else had to bring, because I thought I learned from them, even though I was with CBE that whole time. I got to see and learn from them as well. And again, it really just highlights how much when a district cares about what happened, like how teachers experience professional development. I think I saw someone in the chat say it's not happening to them, it's happening with them. And I think that is a very key component. And I like how it's very competency-based education reflective. I feel like, we want to teach in this direction. So now we're modeling this direction through our professional development. And it was a lot of fun. I really liked seeing what all of my colleagues had to do for the whole year.
To add on to that, I think it was also a great way for teachers and staff to start thinking about what strand they might be interested the following year. So, I mean, I even participated as a coach. I did an exhibition to my group of teachers that I worked with, and then we just got to talk about what we did in each of our cohorts and what might be a good next step for them. So even though they were with one strand the whole year, it gave them the opportunity to kind of experience a little bit of the others. And then one of the things we did at our Mastery Learning Conference for this year was we had a gallery walk. So we had basically a presentation for each one of those, 15 to 20 cohorts that we had this year, so that at the beginning of this school year, all of our staff could see the different options that they had this year, which was a lot more than they had the past year. So they were able to peruse all of those and decide which one they might want to be part of this year.
All right. So as we close out, those are the big questions that we have for you. If this is something that you're thinking about, how might you design a system to build clarity around big rocks for all adults? And how might you build a system to build agency and understanding for all adults? And then when you're thinking about coordinating learning and leading with schools and your district, what does that look like? There is no magic answer. And what is so exciting is that this continues to grow and it continues to flex and be just a really exciting part of the work that we do in Shelby County. And it's been really exciting to share what we're doing. It is not perfect, but it is really something that is exciting to see teachers thinking about the work that we do and sharing in groups with colleagues who are wanting to learn about the same things and learning together and not worrying about who's the expert in the room, but thinking about what they're focused on in yet another way for kids and around their growth. So the one last thing that I wanted to leave you with was, go ahead and go to the final piece, are some resources. We're going to share with you our district professional learning schedule, which gives you all of the schedule for the year, how folks can share all of this. We also are going to share with you an example of the learning continuums. If you go, when this is shared with you, you will be able to click on all of the different continua that we have. You'll be able to see our schedule. And you can also see the example of the website for our Mastery Learning Conference and what that might look like. So these seemed possibly timely for understanding more of what we do. Links are all in that schedule. And
Tracy, we have a really great question in the chat.
Yeah.
About how are we evaluating or assessing the effectiveness of our professional learning throughout the year. And I just want to real quick say that we do have a form that we fill out once we choose our professional learning for the year. And our goals are set all around that professional learning. So it all kind of comes together. So throughout different observations throughout the year, my principal will come in and kind of evaluate according to my personal goals. So it's not just an open evaluation, it's there with a purpose. My principal will come in and give me feedback on my personal goals. It's a PGP. There was a form, I think, at the beginning of our slide where we name and claim those goals. And then we meet a few times throughout the year and reflect on those. So all of that is supposed to kind of work together. If whatever you choose with the district for your professional learning, we're encouraged to make that as part of our professional growth goal for the year so that we can see how those things align together and move forward. I just thought that was a great question. We should have answered.
Yeah. And then also through survey, I mean, that constant survey from teachers and all district staff, constant feedback specifically about not only the content of the sessions, but about the process and logistics. It's a quality, about the quality and meeting the needs of all participants there. Lauren, thanks for linking the slides. Let's see, how do we link in the,
So if you go up in the chat, Melanie has posted the survey.
Okay.
You just have to look up a little bit to find it.
Okay. Melanie, can you possibly send it again? And Melanie, also, how does everyone have access to the slides outside of the chat?
Jennifer K, will those be posted online anywhere?
I believe so, yes, but I'll double check.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us today. We hope that something that we shared with you was helpful or helped you